Sir, I have the honour to report that on the 22nd inset, I was left in command at Rorke's Drift by Major Spalding, who went to help me to hurry on the company of the 24th Regiment ordered to protect the ponds. About 3:15 p.m. on that day, I was at the ponds when two men came riding from Zulu land at a gallop, and shouted to be taken across the river. I was informed by one of them, Lieutenant Ardenarf of Lonsdale Regiment, who remained to assist in the defence of the disaster at Isandlwana camp, and that the Zulus were advancing on Rorke's Drift. The other carbineer rode off to take the news to help me. Almost immediately I received a message from Lieutenant Bromhead, commanding the company of the 24th Regiment at the camp near the Commentary stores, asking me to come up at once. I gave the order to inspan, strike tents, put all stores into wagons, and at once rode up to the comment store, and found that a note had been received from the 3rd column to state that the enemy were advancing in force against our post, which we were to strengthen and hold at all costs. Lieutenant Bromhead was most actively employed in loopholing and barricading the store building and hospital, and connecting the defence of the two buildings by walls of mealie bags and two wagons that were on the ground. I held a hurried consultation with him and with Mr. Dalton of the commentary, who was actively superintending the work of the defence, and whom I cannot significantly thank for his most valuable service. Entirely approving of the arrangements made, I went round the position and then rode down to the ponds and brought up the guard of one sergeant plus 6 men wagon. I desire here to mention the offer of the pontman Daniels and Sergeant Moline, 3rd Buffs, to moor the ponts in the middle of the stream and defend them from their decks with a few men. We arrived at the post about 3:30 p.m. Shortly after, an officer of Durnford's horse arrived and asked for orders. I requested him to send a detachment to observe the drifts and ponts to throw out outposts in the direction of the enemy, and check his advance as much as possible, falling back upon the post when forced to retire, and assisting in its defence. I requested Lieutenant Bromhead to post his men, and having seen his and every man at his post, the work once more went on. About 4:20 p.m, the sound of firing was heard behind the hill to our south. The officer of Durnford's returned, reporting the enemy was close upon us, and that his men would not obey his orders, and were going off to help me. I saw them, apparently about 100 in number, going off in that direction. About the same time, Captain Stevenson's detachment of Natal native contingent left us, as did that officer himself. I saw that our line of defence was too extended for the small number of men now left us, and at once commenced a retrenchment of biscuit boxes. We had not completed a wall 2 boxes high, when about 4:30 p.m, 500 or 600 of the enemy came in sight around the hill to our south, and advanced at a run against the south wall. They were met by a well-sustained fire, but notwithstanding their heavy loss, continued the advance to within 50 yards of the wall, when they met with such a heavy fire from the wall and crossfire from the store that they were checked, but taking advantage of the cover afforded by the cookhouse ovens, kept up a heavy fire. The greater number, however, without stopping, moved to the left around the hospital, and made a rush to our northwest wall of mealie bags, but after short but desperate struggle, were driven back with heavy loss into the brush around the work. The main body of the enemy were close behind, and had lined the ledge of rock and caves overlooking us about 400 yards to our south, from where they kept up a constant fire, and advancing somewhat more to their left than the first attack occupied the Garden Hollow Road and bush in great force. Taking advantage of the bush, which we had not time to cut down, the enemy were able to advance under cover close to our wall, and in this part soon held one side of the wall, while we held the other. A series of desperate assaults was made extending from the hospital along the wall as far as the bush reached, but each was most splendidly met and repulsed by our men with the bayonet. Corporal Sheesh, Natal native contingent, greatly distinguishing himself by his conspicuous gallantry. The fire from the rocks behind us, though badly directed, took us completely in reverse, and was so heavy that we had suffered very severely, and about 6 p.m. were forced to retire behind the retrenchment of biscuit boxes. All this time the enemy had been attempting to force the hospital, and shortly after set fire to its roof. The garrison of the hospital defended it room by room, bringing out all the sick who could be moved before they retired. Private Williams, Hook, R. Jones and W. Jones, 24th Regiment, being the last men to leave, holding the doorway with their bayonet, their own ammunition being expended. From the want of interior communication and the burning of the house, it was impossible to save all. With most heartfelt sorrow, I regret we could not save these poor fellows from their terrible fate. Seeing the burning hospital and the desperate attempts of the enemy to fire the roof of the stores, we converted 2 mealie bag heaps into a sort of redoubt, which gave a second line of fire all around Assistant Commandery Dunn, working hard at this time, much exposed to rendering valuable assistance. As darkness came on, we were completely surrounded, and after several attempts had been made gallantly repulsed, were eventually forced to retire to the middle and the inner wall of the corral on our east. The position we then had we retained throughout. A desultory fire was kept up all night, and several assaults were attempted and repulsed, the vigour of the attacks continuing until after midnight. Our men, firing with the greatest coolness, did not waste a single shot, the light afforded by the burning hospital being of great help to us. About 4 a.m. on the 23rd, the firing ceased, and at daybreak the enemy were out of sight over the hill to the southwest. We patrolled the ground, collecting the arms of the dead Zulus, and strengthened our defences as much as possible. We were removing the thatch from the roof of the stores when about 7 a.m. a large body of the enemy appeared on the hills to the southwest. I sent a friendly who had come in shortly before with a note to the officer commanding at Help Me Car asking for help. About 8 a.m. the third column appeared in sight, the enemy, who had been gradually advancing, falling back as they approached. I considered the enemy who attacked us to have numbered about 3,000. We killed about 350. Of the steadiness and gallant behaviour of the whole garrison, I cannot speak too highly. I wish especially to bring to your notice the conduct of Lieutenant Bromhead of the 2nd Battalion 24th Regiment, of the splendid behaviour of his company. Sergeant Reynolds, in his constant attention to the wounded under fire where they fell. Acting Commander Officer Dalton, to whose energy much to our defences were due, and who was severely wounded while gallantly assisting in the defence. Other men who distinguished themselves: Assistant Commissary Dunn, Acting Storekeeper Byrne, killed; Colour Sergeant Bourne, 2nd Battalion 24th Foot. Sergeant Williams, 2nd Battalion 24th Foot, wounded dangerously since dead. Sergeant Windridge, 2nd Battalion 24th. Corporal Seat, 2nd and 3rd Natal Native Contingent, wounded. 1395 Private Williams, 2nd Battalion 24th. 593 Private W. Jones, 2nd Battalion 24th. Private McMahon, AHC. Private Hook, 2nd Battalion 24th. 716 Private Jones, 2nd Battalion 24th. Private Roy, 1st Battalion 24th. The following return shows the number present at Rorke's Drift on the 22nd of January 1879. Officers 8, NCOs plus men 96, sick NCOs plus men 35, total of 139 men. The following is a list of the killed. Sergeant Maxfield, Private Scanlon, Private Hayden, Private Adams, Private Cole, Private Fagan, Private Chick. 1398 Private Williams, Private Nichols, Private Horrigan, Private Jenkins, Mr. Byrne, Commentary Department, Trooper Hunter, Enhem Police, Anderson, NNC, 1 Private Native. Total 15, 12 wounded, of whom 2 have since died. Sergeant Williams, Private Beckett, making a total of killed of 17. Herewith is appended the plan of the buildings showing our lines of defence. The points of the compass referred to this in the report are shown in sketch, approximately magnetic. I have the honour to be your obedient servant, John R.M. Chard, Lieutenant, Royal Engineers, to Colonel Glynn, C.B., Commanding 3rd Column.